Don't be foolish like the people of Newark were back in '65. I mean, they jumped up, they so bad, the black folks. They so mean, they gonna start a rumble. So they started a rumble. The National Guard came in and surrounded the area. And then the National Guard members got rich. They were selling milk and bread to the people. That's right. Because they did all that, got locked in and didn't have nothing to eat, nothing to feed their babies. So the National Guard hiked up the price. That's when milk was about 35 cents a quart. They were selling it for $1. They were getting over. Now that's crazy. Your enemy has to feed you. So that's one of the things. We are prey to the enemy if we are forced to come out. Okay? So there are just some basic things that we need to think about. What would happen if you could not go outside your door for 6 months? Let's think about that. You and your family as presently constituted. What happens if any of these things make it necessary? They say anybody coming out on the street, you're going to jail, and when you go to jail, it's just like South Africa. They're going to beat you to death. This is going to happen. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that it will begin with conventional weapons. So everybody's scared of nuclear war. It's going to begin with little pot shots. But naturally, you know how that is. I mean, you and me gonna make a deal. We gonna fight, but we gonna fight fair. We'll fight fair till you get the best of me. Then they say all's fair in love and war. Understand? Oh yeah, when it gets to, I mean, when you talking about life and death, who cares about rules? So you break a rule to survive, who cares? Who gonna do something about it? If you dead, you can't be punished. So hey, you got nothing to lose. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it will continue to escalate until they get into all-out nuclear warfare. So that's one thing that we know is coming. Civil unrest, revolution, labor strikes. We know that's coming. Okay? Now, what happens if tonight the right-wingers and the peaceniks decide to meet on the Brooklyn Bridge and go to war? Now, we're not right-wing white folks and we're not peaceniks. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says you do what any intelligent person does. You keep your nose out of other folks' business. That's right. Under any circumstances, depend on carnal weapons. We do have sense and intelligence that God gave us that we will utilize that which we had on hand. Now, we're not going to go into any great detail today for any specific reasons, but there are some specific things that, when the brother said matches, that reminds me that you should have them on hand for several reasons. In matches, your little book matches will not do. If the air around you gets damp enough, they won't strike. You need what they used to call the kitchen matches. The strike anywhere kitchen matches. Okay? You need to keep them in a safe, dry place. All right? Whether you eat it or not, keep a little white sugar in a dry place. And whether you eat it or not, keep a little white flour at home. And whether you barbecue or not, keep you at least a little sack of charcoal. And keep you some bars of soap. Not detergent, not bar detergent. Make sure you read it, that it is pure soap. And keep you some single-edged razor blades. That's all I'm saying about that today. But you need to keep those things in your house. Those are normal household goods. Now, let's start, before we get to the food and water storage, let's begin at the beginning. About now. When we get in a situation like this, there's no time limit on. We're saying 6 months to a year. I mean, that's something we pull out of the air. You have no way of knowing when this stuff starts how long it's going to last. So you can't gauge and say, well, I'm going to have enough to last and I'm going to eat that. And then what happens is you get through eating and it's still going. It's like it's getting hotter. And it's just like you never had it. You're still in a fix. So what you should do is when the thing hits, be prepared to use as little of it. Live on meager rations. And you can't do it if you're used to gorging yourself every night. You can't do it. It cannot be done. So begin now cutting off and cutting down on your food and on your water. One presupposes the other. Cutting down on food automatically cuts down on water. But you must learn to do with less food. Most of you have heard me talk about the reason the Japanese were not prosecuted as war criminals in World War II. The reason was that they lived up to the Geneva Convention. Geneva Convention said that prisoners of war had to be fed the same thing as their captors. When the Japanese captured the American soldiers, they fed them the same thing as their soldiers were eating, and they starved to death. That's why they could not do anything with them. They went right to the book. We fed them a half a cup of rice a day. They sitting down in the concentration camp and our soldiers are working all day. They getting the same food. If they die, we can't help that. Well, the reason is because the Japanese were conditioned to living off of low calorie count per day. The Americans had been used to this high calorie count. You know, it's even in the C ration that they give them. Now this is for battle conditions. When you're out there on the front line, they got chocolate bars in there. I mean, how bad do you need a chocolate bar? But their body has become so accustomed to this high caloric intake till they got to have it. And you take it away from them, their body begins to deteriorate. So you and I have to begin to cut down gradually until we intake very little food. Then when it comes, we can cut it down a little bit more out of necessity, and it won't hurt so bad. It won't bother us physically or mentally, because some of it really will get us mentally, worse than physically. Again, like I say, that chocolate bar killed a lot of soldiers. Don't let junk food kill you. Let's start now making sure that everything that we eat is nutritious. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying to the MGT one time, he said, sister, when you fix your husband's plate and your children's plate and your own plate, it should be prepared as carefully as a doctor prepares a prescription. He said you should not put anything on that plate if you don't know what it does. Now think about that. You think about all the stuff that we stick in our mouths. If you ask us, what part of the body does that nourish? We can't tell you. That's a waste. We're eating a lot of stuff just taking up space to get full. We should know. You know? How many of you have headaches? Ever have headaches? What do you do? Grab an aspirin? You know? Stuff like that is not necessary. Tension can easily be relieved.